Israel's invasion of Gaza has begun, and it's time to get some moral clarity in what's going on here. Its tanks went into the Palestinian enclave 3 weeks after the Hamas terrorist group that runs Gaza and is backed by Iran slaughtered 1,400 Israelis and took 230 hostage. Israel's Prime Minister addressed the nation.
Our partners in the Arab world believe and understand today that unless Israel wins, they will be next in line in this conquer and murder. This is our second war of liberation.
Now, that axis of evil is already threatening to turn this invasion into a wider war, even a world war. As Israel went in, rockets were fired at it from Lebanon, Yemen and Syria, all suspected from Iran-backed terrorists in those countries. Iran itself is threatening war. Russia last week hosted a Hamas delegation that asked it for help. Now, on the Israeli side, the US has sent 3 naval battle groups to help its air defences and warn off any country thinking of helping Hamas. But that is not the whole nightmare for Israel. It faces other horrific challenges, and many of its soldiers could die, as will Palestinian civilians. For one, the hostages that Hamas took are believed to be scattered in the 500 kilometres of tunnels Hamas says is built under Gaza, tunnels for its fighters and its weapons, and these tunnels will be booby-trapped. What's more, some of their entrances and rooms are believed to be under Gaza's main hospital, for instance. In fact, Hamas command headquarters are reportedly there. Others are under mosques, schools, apartment buildings, so clearing them out is going to be deadly work. And Hamas has made sure its civilians will die as human shields. In fact, it has banned many civilians from fleeing to somewhere safer. It has also not built them air raid shelters and won't let them hide in its tunnels either. And if you still doubt what is going on here, the Hamas leader asked his own civilians to die to give Hamas a propaganda win.
كما قلت وفي كل مرة أكرر إن دماء الأطفال والنساء والشيوخ لا أقول تستصرخكم بل نحن الذين نحتاج هذه الدماء لكي توقظ فينا روح الثورة.
How long before Israel's critics finally realise Hamas really is a death cult and there can be no peace with a group like that? Now, Israel has a further problem as well, international pressure to actually give in. In the United Nations, you hear what many on the left here are saying too: ceasefire. When a ceasefire actually means leave Hamas alone even when it slaughters your people. Never, Israel, fight back. On the weekend, the UN even passed a resolution calling for that ceasefire. Only 14 countries voted against it. Countries like the US, because this resolution didn't also criticise Hamas or call on Hamas to release its hostages. Now, sadly, our Albanese government was not one of those 14. It just abstained. Opposition leader Peter Dutton and former Liberal Foreign Minister Alexander Downer were scathing.
And I think it was an incredibly weak display of leadership from the Prime Minister.
I definitely think Australia should have voted against it because, after all, a truce, some sort of halt in the action against Hamas, that's what people are really demanding, will give Hamas the opportunity to resupply.
But the United Nations did worse than that. Countries like China and Russia also voted down another resolution which did condemn Hamas, the terrorist group that actually started this war, and applauded as they did so.
Draft Amendment A/ES10 L26 is not adopted.
Now, in Israel, at least in Australia, 6 of our 7 former Prime Ministers, from John Howard to Scott Morrison, including Julia Gillard, at least signed a statement calling out what's going on. They're blaming Hamas for causing this war and pointing to rising anti-Semitism in this country. But the 7th surviving ex-Prime Minister, Paul Keating, refused to sign. Well, he's fanatically pro-China, in my opinion, and almost crazily anti-American. Is that something to do with it? I don't know. And in our streets, the same division. In Melbourne, a pro-Palestinian group whose leader has called for Israel to be destroyed from the river to the sea actually got permission to fly 7 Palestinian flags. And in Sydney, the Canterbury Bankstown Council, heavily Muslim area, flew their own Palestinian flag, backed by Federal Labor Minister Tony Burke.
Once again, it is not the Hamas flag that's flying, it's the Palestinian flag. And it's a flag that gives people the chance to know that there is recognition and not selective grief.
Well, I have news for Burke. That flag still is a battle flag of another terrorist group. It was adopted by the Palestinian Liberation Army or organisation when terrorist Yasser Arafat was its leader. And behind that history is a truth. Israel is in a war for its survival against the terrorist group backed by regimes who hate the West and its freedoms as well. This is a war we cannot afford Israel to lose.